All right, so let's get started. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for joining our new virtual meetups. I hope everybody's had a good week so far. And it's been a while since we've had our first Friday calls. We started those in the pandemic when I was a fledgling on the MassAccess board, but I really enjoyed them. I think it was a great way for all of us to check in with each other when we weren't able to join each other in person. And I think that this would be a great way to bring back some of that communication, especially when there are maybe some centers that can't get away from the office to join it in in-person event, or maybe just are a little too far away for the events that we are holding. So on today's call, we'll be going over some of the in-person and online events that MassAccess has been organizing for this year. And we'll also give an update on the streaming bill, which I'm sure everyone is really eager to talk about. So we'll wait a little while before we get into that so that we can make sure everybody that wants to talk about that has time to get on the call. And then if we have time afterwards, I'm going to open it up to some questions or concerns that all of you might have. I've been seeing on the forum that there have been some difficulties with Verizon Cable recently, so if we can, we'll talk about that. Otherwise, the governance committee actually plans to talk about that this afternoon and see if there's any ways that the MassAccess board can help with that. Um, so first off, I will toss it over to our events chair, Karen Henderson, who has been doing an amazing job with her committee to put together a whole bunch of fun events and informative events for this new year. So Karen, take it away.
So we are going to have, Katie has scheduled several of these virtual meetups. It was in the email, but we'll have one a quarter. And so just to mark your calendars, one will be Friday, July 24th, Friday, September 25th, and Friday, December 11th. I am going to send an email out to the forum with these dates, but if you want to mark them down. So Friday, the 24th of July, Friday, the 25th of September, and Friday, December 11th. The next thing we have coming up after this is actually a webinar that we're hosting on Wednesday, April 8th. So that's coming up in a couple weeks. That webinar is sponsored by Telview, and the title of that one is Are You Ready for the 2026 ADA Accessibility Rules, a Guide for Community Media? And, as we approach those new accessibility compliance deadlines, just important that we all know about how that's going to affect government meetings and programming and how those are produced, published, broadcast, etc. So kind of giving some clear guidelines on those ADA requirements. And we have speakers. Mike Wassenaar will be there. Wassenaar will be there from the Alliance for Community Media. Matt Schuster, who's the executive director at Public Media Network. And then also, of course, Jesse Lehrman, who is president and CEO of Telview. So that one's brought to you by Telview, 3 p.m. Wednesday, April 8th. Again, these will all be in an email that you'll get later on today, but that'll be a big one, and hopefully we can get a lot of people there. I know that's definitely a concern for people, and something that I know some of them have not been, some of them being me, have not paid attention to, but definitely need to focus on that because some of those are kicking in April here. And then we have a meet and greet that's scheduled. We actually have two that are upcoming. One is Wednesday, May 6th. That's from 10 to 12, and we're going back to the State House for that one. We had talked about doing the State House annual meeting, and because of the weather, we didn't end up getting able to do that. So getting in to do that. So Wednesday, May 6th, 10 o'clock, meet and greet at the State House. We just want to be there, have a presence, a little legislative update, have our voices be heard. And we're really hoping that people pair that with a meeting with their local legislators, again, to talk about anything. It's always good to just connect with them, but certainly in trying to have them help push our bill forward. So that's Wednesday, May 6th, 10 o'clock. And then we have another one scheduled for Friday, June 12th. And that meet and greet is in Taunton at TCAM. So Kim Murphy will be our host, and there'll be more coming out about that, but you can mark your calendars for that as well. So we feel like trying to move our meetings around the state a little bit. I think we'll have another one in the fall, probably up a little farther north, the Taunton one being a little farther southeast, see if we can get one more in Metro West. So we're just going to try to, keep having those. And as people can attend them and we can connect and, share ideas and get information, all the better. So that's kind of what's coming up with events. I don't know if anybody has any questions. Happy to answer. You will see a message to the forum later today with some of those save the dates. So just know that if we can get them in our calendar, you have a better chance of attending. And in addition to that, there'll be the actual invitation for the Wednesday, April 8th webinar sponsored by Telview on the ADA accessibility. So you'll see two of those. One is just save the dates for a whole bunch of things, and the other is the actual webinar invite.
I just want to add two more things. It's really important that you have good relationships with your local legislators, and it would be awesome if you can set up some time the day that we have our meet and greet at the State House to talk with them, but give them a call or an email ahead of time just to make sure they're going to be there. David and I went to the State House last month, and I was so excited to meet my legislator, but he was not in. He was in the district, so he was probably in my town. So that kind of stunk. So just, don't be like me, prepare ahead of time. And the other thing is I just want to echo something that David said in a past board meeting. I just want to thank the whole events committee because you've gotten so much done in 3 months. We have all these events scheduled already. It's just really nice to see. And Karen, you're doing a great job leading the way on that. So thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it's a good team of people making it happen. And that's nice of you, Matt, little rock star. But I think Matt, you're one of the people that's been making it happen. So yeah, no, we'll see what we can do. I always find it so helpful to talk with other general managers, directors, studio managers. I just feel like every time I interact with people, I learn a little more. And you guys all know it's hard in town. No one does what we do. So you don't really have peers who you can talk things through with or get new ideas with. So I just think anytime we can engage, which is, some of what we're trying to do as community centers with our residents, right? Trying to get them connected and engaged with each other. And I feel like kind of walking the walk with that myself. And certainly trying to help on the legislative front. I just think that if we're not pushing for that, we really, as people in the industry, we're doing ourselves a huge disservice because something's got to give. We all know that. We could talk finances forever, but so yeah, that's all. Thanks.
Well, that helps lead us right to the next portion. David, I'm going to put you on the spot. You ready to talk legislation? Always, right? David, you've had 6 years. Just kidding. No, I put you on the spot. All good.
I really need a new PC on my desk. I really need a new computer because I can't do more than one thing at a time or the whole thing locks up and I can't even click on Zoom to unmute myself. So my apologies, everybody.
All good.
It's good to see you all. I'm always energized by people participating and more people being involved and engaged. It makes a difference, I think. We are all in very similar situations. And I think Katie kind of alluded to this, or Karen did actually. It's not common, right? So like all nonprofits and, small government operations have budget constraints, but no one really has it the same way that we do, right? So it is important that we keep talking, and I'm really glad that the board decided to bring some of these conversations back. I think they're beneficial to all of us. So please encourage your neighbors and colleagues to join as well. And it doesn't have to be an executive director. It can always be just anybody on the staff that wants to learn more about what's happening around them. I think we all benefit from that. As far as the legislation goes, it's a frustrating time of year because there's not a lot to do, right? So you kind of understand at this point sort of how it works in the beginning of the session. Everything is ramped up. You've got to testify. You've got to get all those co-sponsors. You got to get all those letters. You've got to get all that testimony put together and send that all in. And now we're sort of about 18 months into a legislative session, and everything sort of turns internal, right? So it doesn't mean that things aren't moving and things aren't working, but there's less outside influence. Now, I think it's a good thing that a lot of people have been working with municipalities and getting letters of support and sending those in. But we don't send them directly to like House Ways and Means or Senate Ways and Means. We send them to our legislators who will hopefully say, wow, this is, I guess it does have some support. Let me check in with Ways and Means and see where that bill is. This is important to the constituents and the city government or the town government. So, there's no real direct contact. What we've been doing is trying to set up meetings with a few different people. We're trying to get in with Senate leadership and House leadership. I think you get to a certain point in the legislative session where, if the Speaker of the House or the Senate President is not really supportive of your effort, it's probably not going to move, right? So they have a lot of power and they have a lot of say in what moves forward out of and gets to the floor for a vote. So we've been trying to angle those. We're also we had when Katie and I went into the state house, we got some advice from Chair Farley Bouvier, who said, you ought to maybe meet with the minority leader and make sure you have Republican support, because even though they are a vast minority in Massachusetts, it's important to have them on your side. So we're working on that meeting as well, getting those lined up in the next few months. I think the biggest thing that we can do is just to continue to try to remind our legislators of the issue. I know it's a pain in the ass and you feel like you're bothering people, but it's really the only way to keep this issue top of mind. Don't forget that they're dealing with hundreds of issues. So if you're constantly reminding them, being that squeaky wheel is kind of important, right? Because your legislators now are the ones that you need. You can show up at the state house whenever you want. But that, like I said, that outside advocacy, that time for that is kind of done. So the inside advocacy is what really, really makes a difference now. So just be engaging with your reps and senators as much as you can. Ask them to check in with Ways and Means and just say, hey, what's going on with that bill? We want to see that bill go forward. Like I said, those letters from municipalities, those make a difference too, but send them directly to your legislators and at this point, it's not going to any specific committee. We will continue to meet. I think, the best chance for this bill, especially in the House, the Senate is a little bit different because they sort of do things differently. The Senate will pass a smaller bill on its own. I think it has to do with the fact that there are fewer of them, so that they take up smaller court. In the House, they tend to really concentrate on larger bills. And a lot of times what they'll do is put bills together that are the same. Or a larger piece of legislation. And what we're targeting is an economic development bill that should be happening in the next couple of weeks. It should start to be put together, and we will try to attach our bill as an amendment to that. And that's sort of a well-worn strategy. You just hope that it stays attached to it and doesn't, someone doesn't look at it and say, okay, well, this we got to get rid of that, right? So they cut certain things up because everybody's trying to attach their bills to a larger piece of legislation that has a good chance of passing. So those are kind of the strategies that we're looking at now. I really don't expect um, I would be surprised if anything happened between now and um, July, right? Because it's just sort of the way it works. It's really frustrating. It can be really, really frustrating. You're always like, well, why aren't they doing anything? Well, they're doing stuff, but it's just the way it's historically been. They do a lot of these things toward the end of the session. They know that they're coming up on deadlines, and the end of the session, the formal session is July 31st. And that always ends up being like a marathon night, and they stay there all night and they're trying to get stuff passed. And it's kind of a silly way of doing things, to be honest with you. But I mean, much can be said about the legislative process here and in other states too. So, I mean, hopefully we'll have some updates. Hopefully we'll get uh, some actual concrete news to share with you. But in the meantime, the biggest thing is to continue to engage in a meaningful way with all those legislators, like Katie mentioned. I would absolutely take any questions that you might have.
No one else will jump in. I will. Hey, David, how's it going?
Hi, Greg. Good to see you.
Good, yeah, it's good to be on. So I'm going in front of my select board, I don't know, sometime next month or two. We're going to get a letter. Um, so my specific situation, both of my rep and senator are already co-sponsors. We'll send something to them. Is there any other specific ask? Like, do I ask them, is it useful to ask them to advocate directly to Ways and Means or just be like,
Yes.
continue your advocacy? Okay. Yeah, I'm
Yep.
putting the
That's
letter
that's
together
the ask. Ask
and
them
just,
specifically, please call over to Ways and Means.
okay.
It's in House Ways and Means, it's in Senate Ways and Means.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll do
Ask
that.
them
And
to
anyone
check in
who's,
on it, get
yeah.
back to you with an update. Um, the more that the chairs of Ways and Means are hearing from their colleagues, the better chance we have. So that's sort of the strategy at this point.
Got it. And just for anyone thinking about it, I don't know if anyone is on the call thinking about it, hasn't done it. It is honestly an excuse to get in front of the select board and just explain that this is the issue. In the case that it does not pass, to be like, hey, we are trying, but if this doesn't go, there has to be another solution. So it is sort of me selfishly going in front of the select board, but I'll do what I can for y'all too. But yeah, just anyone who's thinking about it, it's always good to have to be top of mind with them too, right? So
Yeah,
that's our
absolutely.
long-term
That's a
strategy.
great point, Greg.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Yep. That's all I got. Thanks, guys.
So just
Yep.
as for my own clarification, and I
Oh,
can ask Nancy to elaborate on this more. When you say like go to the select board, is that so that the select board would then advocate to state reps?
Yeah, well, I'll talk about my specific thing. Then David, maybe you can talk about the bigger picture. But for me, we have a select board member who's actively involved here and is interested, and I explained the issue, and he suggested bringing it to the select board and getting a letter to whoever it needs to go in front of to push to support the bill. So that's
Oh,
kind of where we fall with it. And then from there, I'm going to get on the agenda and just sort of show some charts and graphs that we all are very familiar with that show the wonderful financial condition of community media in Massachusetts and
right.
explain to them that we're in an okay spot in like the short and medium term, but we're not in a sustainable place and to kind of just keep it on the front of their mind. That's our goal when we go in.
Oh, awesome. I also was kind of wondering, Nancy and I were thinking about doing like we're from Billerica Access Television. So Nancy and I were thinking about doing like a letter, like a call to action from our members to like write our state rep and be like, hey, like do this, support us. Would that, David, would that be us saying would we be advocating to our members to tell them, like, tell Mark Lombardo to go directly to Ways and Means?
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
And Nancy will know that too, but I just want to sound like I know what I'm talking about when I talk to Nancy. But
You're doing great, Charlie. Jeff, you had a question, I think?
Yeah, just to know. So theoretically, or in reality, if the legislature wanted to pass this bill today or tomorrow, they could do it. There isn't
Oh,
anything.
sure.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
But you're saying that attaching it to another bill that may have a higher recognition or higher chance of passing is a good way to maybe let it ride on that bill? Is that the strategy?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's one of the strategies, right? We're
Okay.
we're we're at the point where we're not saying no to anything, right?
Right. Okay.
We're not saying no to the bill language being changed. We're not saying no to if the legislature came to us and said, "Listen, we don't like this," and some of them don't. Let's be
Hmm.
honest. But here's what I'm thinking. What if we did this? We're listening. We're not
Okay.
we're not against any type of uh, benefit that would come to us. So
Okay.
we're trying to work
Okay.
all.
And just I'm not, just for my own morbid curiosity or whatever, not morbid curiosity, but how would it be if somebody decided, let's pass this bill? What would have to happen for that to be put in front of the legislature and voted on today or tomorrow? Who would have to make that happen?
Well, it would be the Ways and Means Committee on
Okay.
either side. They'd have to send it
Okay.
to a third reading, and then it gets to the actual floor, and then there's a vote.
Okay.
There's a vote on one side, and then it gets changed to the other side, and has to
Okay.
vote. Then it goes in front of the governor. I mean, it's nuts,
So,
you know.
so if
Um,
the Ways and Means said we want to pass this on to the legislature, they can do that.
yes. Oh,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right. Okay. That's good.
Yep.
Thanks for clarifying that.
No, you're very welcome. And we're working on, leadership at Ways and Means on both sides as well. Just because, they carry a lot of clout. And specifically, most of you guys know Glenn Williams. Um, Boston has, I think, 16 reps and senators. So, we reached out, and I didn't realize there was that many at that point. And I always like been bothering Glenn. Hey, Glenn, call your reps and senators, not knowing that, like me, it's two. I have one and one, basically. Glenn's going to make 16 phone calls. So we were reaching out to try to really give him a hand, because the House Ways and Means chair is from Boston. So, and we know that, BNN carries a lot of clout. So hopefully, they've heard that by now. And that happened in the last few months. So, we're just continuing to try to make noise at this point.
I think Alex had his hand raised, but Barbara also had a question in the chat. So Barbara asked, have we set up any meetings with the Senate president? And I know we haven't yet, but yeah, not yet.
Well, that we don't have one. I know that Senator Lewis had been meeting with President Spilka, and I'm the chair of Senate Ways and Means is escaping me right now. But I know that, again, if we're gonna have a meeting like me and Katie and Karen, it's because we're invited to a meeting at this point. Like, like it's mostly internal stuff. So it's legislators talking to legislators. That's why we choose our champions carefully, right? Because we hope that these are the folks who can make a difference. And the lobbyists become important at the end here. Rep Mosquito often calls Lindsay our closer, right? Because now she's working on the inside. She has that ability to get in and speak to some of these key people. So we're hopeful, but it does force you to sort of have some faith, and that's a hard thing to do.
No, David, I was just going to say, if you wanted, I could reach out to her staff to see if I could get you and Katie an invitation to meet with her, if that would work.
It can't hurt, Barbara. So yeah, I mean, I know you have a relationship with her, so
Yeah,
it would certainly be helpful if you were to reach out.
I will certainly do my best.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Barbara.
Welcome.
And Alex had his hand raised.
Yeah, a quick question. So when a bill goes to the Ways and Means, do these bills ever get heard, or is it just a storage place for it?
That's a good question. It seems like it's just a catch-all, right? Because there are hundreds of bills in front of Ways and Means.
It's like I did ask my Senate office, hey, because she could cover for the vice chair Ways and Means. I did ask, when are these going to be heard, or any type of bills can be heard for Ways and Means, and I got no answer.
Yeah, and they don't necessarily get heard, right? There aren't hearings, right?
Well,
So
yeah.
the way it works is that this is sort of a secondary committee, right? It's already been heard. It was heard in front of the Joint Committee on AITIC. The That joint committee gave it a favorable recommendation. So yes, now they sort of become the sponsor at that point. It's not the individual legislators. Now that joint committee is the sponsor. We are putting this forward. And so that takes that step. Problem is, right, it's almost like an upside down funnel, right? You have thousands on the bottom, it becomes hundreds, and it's just trying to get to that top. And so that's really the challenge that we're facing now, is just trying to we've done a terrific job, and I've said this before in posts. We've done a great job of outlining the problem. I think all our legislators understand that we have a fundamental funding problem. To me, and this is my personal opinion, our biggest issue is that, number one, we still do have a revenue stream. It is waning significantly, but we have a revenue stream. And two, what we do does not affect everyone as much as we'd like to think it does. Right? It's not like a hospital or something like that. A lot of people support us and enjoy what we put out there, and support our efforts, and agree with the mission of keeping media local, but not everyone does. And so it's always trying to compete with some really, really important stuff, you know? So part of the issue is that legislators need to prioritize, right? And can we rise in that priority list? That's the hard part. And making noise is really the only way I know to do that right now.
So you bring up revenue.
Agreed?
Here's my pitch. Here's my pitch. Did anyone get any numbers from their municipalities on how much they got, or how many subscribers they got? Because I got my numbers already.
Yeah, I know what
Yeah.
they do.
Yeah. So my point is, once everyone gets their numbers, and we figure out, crap, we lost 10%. Because I lost 10% revenue this year. And crap, I lost 12% of my subscribers. Um, and tell our legislators, hey, we just took a big cut this year. Or if we were seeing a big cut, I think 10% is a big cut at this rate. Because yes, we have a revenue stream, but if we tell everyone at the right time that, hey, this all went down and we all got the similar number, maybe that could get the fires going.
Mhm.
At least the subscriber numbers too, because I'm sure if you see my testimony, I put in line graphs all the time.
But where would the funding come from? Like, I love the idea of everybody like presenting these numbers at the same time, but I think that we still have to identify where the money comes from. Or are we just suggesting like the state of Massachusetts says, oh, okay, maybe we'll use taxpayer money to fund that? Like, what's the ask?
Or are you just saying like to make a big splash with it, Alex? Like if
Yes, make
everybody
a big
says, "Oh
splash.
my God, we're
So take our this year's numbers that we got for whatever 2025 reflected, and make a big splash. Say, hey, we all lost this amount of money this year. This is serious. If we lost this amount of subscribers, this is serious, and it's continuing to go down. I think that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to identify more money. I'm just saying that we should all at once, like maybe at once, if we can coordinate like that, and just tell people this is happening.
well,
Give them that snapshot.
like maybe what you want is kind of a mass access communication saying the numbers are in and revenues for the past year are down by X or subscribers are down by Y. Like so it's a mass access communication. This continues a trend of, and then locally you could put it out saying to your local media saying, and in Hadley, this is the number we saw, or we saw even more than what this average is across Massachusetts or something. So you're just saying again, heightening the awareness of the problem.
Exactly. I think that's my pitch, kind of heightening the awareness.
So, sorry, the 2025 subscriber numbers are not out yet. Is that correct? Unless
I
I
don't
missed
think
it.
so.
Okay. I mean, I'll be happy to do my thing, David, once they come in and show how bad it is. I put that together every
I
year,
love
and
that.
then
It's
so as with a little bit of background on this, so every year when those numbers come out, I have a like a visualization I put together that shows the numbers town by town and across the state and by cable subscriber and all that stuff, or cable company. And it's obviously not great. Um, the good thing about that is that it's readily available information, like the state publishes it in a way that's somewhat digestible and you can do something with. The problem with revenue, and David and everyone else on the committee right now, I can tell you, is going to be hard to pull actual revenue numbers from people because you'd basically need every station to actually respond and do something with it. I know from like a more local perspective, when I go in front of the select board, that's like a huge part of our pitch is subscribers are down this much and then revenue is down and it's getting worse, right? So I saw the last Comcast check for us was down about 6% quarter to quarter, which is pretty horrendous. And I know that that looked like that was the case across the state. So I think it's hard to pull together for like a state level thing, but that's exactly where I was like, okay, I need to get in front of the select board ASAP to sort of start sounding the alarm that like 6% is a big drop. And then obviously everyone sees the inflationary pressure on everything else you pay for, whether it's utilities, professional fees, rent, like everything just goes up and up. And a big part of my perspective is like, you see the revenue going down, everything else going up. There's no way that we can possibly continue to offer the services we've been providing unless something moves, whether that's the funding bill on the state level or this has to go in front of town meeting at some point. If you want what you're getting out of us, you're going to have to find some money. And I think that it works on a local level too. I know you all are involved with the legislation and all that part of it, but don't forget about the fact that you have to advocate locally as well and try to get some support from your actual municipality.
I would agree with that.
Yes, sir.
Because I think I also agree with Alex that making a splash with numbers is a big deal. And if you put all the numbers together, obviously that's a that's a bigger deal, right? But to me, it doesn't really change the minds of those who would think that this whole industry that we are in is outdated, right? So I think that there is a lot to do on the local level too. Greg, you sort of hinted at this, like that public awareness part of things is really, really important too. And just making people aware at the local level that this is all the stuff that we do. And this is our funding structure. And this is what you folks in Danvers or Milton or wherever, this is what you stand to lose. So you've got to constantly be doing a little bit of both. Mike Wassenaar says it's three, right? So it's local, it's statewide, and you've got to do some national advocacy as well.
Is there any way? And I know, Shane, you have a question. I'll be really quick. Um, is there any way to tie in some of the federal issues going on, um, our federal issues in with this too? Because I mean, our state's not really happy with the federal government right now.
Um,
Polite way of putting it.
Not really. I have a good relationship with Senator Markey's office, and I try to keep them up to date. But the senator will never really step in. Like it might be an offhand conversation if Ed Markey has a personal relationship with Aaron Michaelwitz or something like that. So, hey, what are you doing with that community media bill? You know, but they don't play in the same boxes really. Like they're not someone in the national level is not going to come down and advocate at the state level. It just doesn't really happen that way in from what I know. Because I've asked that same question. Can we down the line? It helps. You get to the governor's office or something like that. Sure. If this is something that'll aggravate the federal government and what they're trying to do in deregulation, I think it'll help.
Okay. All
I
right.
think
Thank
Shane
you.
had a question.
Absolutely.
Um, you talked about the leadership positions, minority and majority positions on the House Ways and Means, House and Senate. And I mean, what if you had some sort of, I don't know what to call it, like a SWAT team, but you went in to say the district for Patrick O'Connor, who's in the minority, but he's assistant minority leader of the Joint Committee. He's got the towns of Duxbury, Hingham, Hull, Marshfield, Norwell, Weymouth. I mean, what if by working with our colleagues in those towns, really help them to get, if they haven't already passed a resolution, those towns to pass a letter of a resolution and give it directly to, make sure that Patrick O'Connor gets that with the message that you can pass this. We need to get this passed and approved
Mhm.
and put some pressure, not just on him, but maybe pick some of those people out and concentrate on getting two or three of the councils or select boards to pass the resolutions, to pass on to those people, and start applying pressure to those folks who are in the positions of power who might say, okay, I'm hearing from these people, this is becoming more and more important. And maybe then they'll bring it up. Maybe that creates some sort of pressure point on them to move on it, or at least to keep it in mind. I mean, I'd be willing to sit with some folks and maybe start identifying, working with our colleagues, like say in Comerford's district, to say, okay, what could we do there? Who hasn't passed a bill? Who
Mhm.
hasn't passed a letter of resolution in Hingham or Duxbury or et cetera?
Yeah,
Rather
I
than
think it.
rather than
I
try
think
to
it's
cover
solid.
everybody. I'm sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, it's a solid strategy, and we've sort of started doing that already. So, we know that Senator Lewis was going to have that meeting with Chair Rodriguez, and we know that he's down in Bristol County, and so we got on the phone with Keith in Fall River and said, "Hey, Keith, how's your relationship with Senator Rodriguez? Can you call him about this? Can you talk to, just set up a time so that when Senator Lewis goes to talk to Senator Rodriguez, oh yes, oh my one of my constituents called me about that just the other day. So yeah, I do think some targeted advocacy is helpful as well, and maybe you and I can talk offline about setting up something like that.
You're muted, Jeff.
Well, we always hear from our federal and state legislatures is, if I'm not hearing from my mayors, if I'm not hearing from the select board,
Mhm.
it doesn't creep into my attention. And
That's true.
if they're getting those letters saying, "Hey, dude, this is important. You need to do something. You're in a position of power. Can't you help push this along?" And I know Belmont sent a very strongly worded letter to Brownsberger, and it's the first time he kind of popped his head up and said, "Okay, all right, what's going on? What can we do?"
Mm.
So anyway,
I think Shane's been waiting for a little while here. Shane, how are you?
Hi, everybody. No worries. I just wanted to say a couple things. I wanted to agree with Alex. I think a really good idea if we did a coordinated push, like every station, once they get their numbers for 2025 coming in. I think the collective, if we all kind of did coordinate like a posting or something at the same time, it does get out there more and kind of gets in the ether. I also wanted to say we did find our numbers out live during our annual report from the town administrator on Tuesday. Um, I would say what Alex was saying earlier too about, kind of emphasizing how big the drop is. When that news came in during the middle of the select board meeting, one of the select board members' face kind of just went ashen and realized, oh, wait, we may not even have this meeting in like a year in this room because there'll be no staff. So that actually helped, I think, actually get the select board to sign for our letters. So I think any type of, not doomsdaying, but, putting it out there, be like, yeah, this is really, really serious. And then I was going to say, but kind of piggyback off what Jeff was saying, getting senators like O'Connor who are not like in your district, but and my employees, none of them actually live where we work, and we did find out that one of our employees lives in a district where neither of his reps have signed on, so he's been working with his select board and stuff. So maybe if your employees don't live in your town and they're senators and their reps, kind of just utilizing everybody and be like, hey, like I don't work in this town, but this is important to me, kind of getting that message across. Thanks.
Oh, good point, all. I always say too that like I think some of these, town and city governments are starting to realize that if our funding dries up tomorrow, who's on the hook for paying for their meeting coverage and all of that stuff? They are. And they're all struggling with their budgets to begin with, right? So they should be perfectly willing to advocate for a change to the funding model, right? Because everybody's struggling and it's all relative. So I think, that's what's going to happen. And I'm trying to make the case on the statewide level that we're going to end up with an accessibility issue because certain municipalities are going to be able to pay for public access, others are not. And so now, how come, some municipalities in the state are going to, it's going to be an equity issue. So I think that that's a good point to bring up with them too. Listen, if MATV doesn't have any money, who's paying for, the technology's not that good yet. Robots can't do it yet. So somebody's going to have to do it. Katie, how's it going over there?
Great. I've been typing with my town administrator to see if she has our numbers yet, because that would be great. And I also just sent an email to the DTC to see if they can send those numbers for everyone to me as well. And as soon as I get those, I can send those out to all of you as well.
Awesome.
So yeah, does anybody else have any other legislative questions? No. Okay. Oh yeah, Michael.
I just wanted to chime in. I joined the meeting late, so I apologize. I missed the beginning part of the conversation. Here in Foxborough, on Tuesday, we covered a State House Ways and Means Committee meeting that lasted 9 hours. It was held in district here in Foxborough. And interestingly enough, when they send these Ways and Means Committee in district meetings, there apparently is no budget that follows that. So my 2 days of setup, 6 cameras, a dozen microphones, audio boards, et cetera, PA systems, was offered at no cost to the state. Was broadcast on the statewide, broadcasting services, like on the state website, the legislative website. with closed captioning, etc. So it was quite the process to go through. We got a round of applause for our support at the end of the meeting with a thank you. But after sitting through 9 hours, it seemed very obvious to me that the body is overloaded with decisions that they have to make during a tough budget season on the state level. Every state department that came before them, this specific Ways and Means was focused on public safety and the judiciary. And they were talking about if I think it's the state income tax were to be lowered based on a proposal that was made that the state was going to lose $1 billion, and where's that money going to come out of your budget to each group? And they were focused on FIFA and all the things that are kind of front and center. And I also had a conversation with Paul Feeney's staff. He was the chair of that particular meeting, and I don't want to say there was some dismissiveness about the streaming bill, or just that, oh yeah, Jim Jones has contacted us. Oh yeah, you've contacted us, and we know about it. But it's hard to convey the urgency and bust through the clutter and the noise that is at the State House. And I did put it in the terms of, if the bill doesn't pass, I don't know if we're around a year from now doing these type of things without, you bake sales aren't going to get it done, and there has to be another revenue source that can pull that in. So I don't know that I'm coming to you with solutions, but it just that experience of going through that 9 hour live stream and supporting the state was eye-opening from a couple of different perspectives, and just the sheer amount of noise that is at the state level that they're dealing with.
Uh-huh.
And we're not a state department. We're not talking about taxpayer dollars. We're talking about this little a fee on streaming providers, and it's not front and center that I could tell from anybody.
Michael, I appreciate that update on a couple of levels, because first of all, yeah, I mean, I totally agree, and that's what I was talking about earlier. Is just trying to make this a priority somehow, and I don't know how to do that other than to keep making the point and keep making the case. Secondly, I think we've got to elevate this story of yours, to sort of see if we can make that a little more well known, and to let people. This is a perfect illustration, right? If Foxborough isn't there to take care of that, Foxborough Cable Access isn't there, who does it? So, um, we've always sort of lived and operated in the background, right? How many people have you talked to just this month who, oh, I had no idea how you were funded? Well, because no one ever really knew. We had plenty of money. We operated in the background. We all had our separate contracts. We did what we were supposed to do. And now all of a sudden everybody's like, well, what do you mean you need money? Don't you get taxpayer money? Aren't you getting funded through my taxes? No, we're not. So we've got to tell that story. And I think you've got a really good one there. So I will reach out offline, and maybe we can find a good way to get that amplified a little bit. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah,
I just
go ahead.
had one more quick comment to make based on what I was hearing there, that, you know, if we can pin down a couple of messages that are easy to kind of repeat, like this bill should be easy to pass because it doesn't impact state budget. And the key word is it ought to be easy to pass. It's urgent. And I think I'm going to repeat the message. If our municipalities are not putting the pressure on the legislators specifically, we can talk about all these other ideas, which can all be very effective. But to me, that's where the pressure point is. They've got to hear from the bodies, that they're responsible to reporting back to, in a way. So I just think easy, urgent, and but get the towns to put pressure on them. But anyway, that was my
No, you're
thoughts.
you're not wrong.
Let's not complicate the bill. It's an easy thing to pass in a way.
Yeah.
But not
Mhm.
they don't have to break a sweat.
No, they really don't. And it's a it's a feel good one too, right? It's something that they can tout and say, look what we did. Look what we did in order to keep this really cool thing going. So
Yeah,
that this is a public service. This is, the fact that it doesn't rise to the top is part of the
yeah,
frustration, excuse me.
yeah.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes left. We've got a question from Jonathan and then a question from Alex. So let's go with Jonathan
Well, it's
first.
actually more of a. Can you guys hear me? I had to change my.
Yep.
It's actually more of a comment. So I recently did my budget meeting for a few people. We're not hurting right now because of the way our contracts are, but we have some new board members. They were surprised that we don't get money from streaming. They thought that we did. So I think maybe one thing would be worthwhile, maybe when we get together at the state house, is maybe having a discussion about how do we approach our select boards. I think they would be on board with supporting something like this, but maybe because I think I recently went before all the select boards in my town to get a board member on, and if necessary, I'll do it again in support of this bill. And be good to sort of just get a good idea of how to do that, so I'm not wasting anyone's time.
No, that sounds awesome. Let's make that part of the discussion.
Okay, cool.
Thank you. And thank you, Michael, for sending that coverage. I'd love to watch it. Maybe not the whole 9 hours, but at least the the ending where they thank you. And then Alex, I don't know of any others. I don't know if David does know of any community media centers that have closed their doors, but I want to make sure that I understand you correctly. Like closing their doors, like completely shutting down the operation, or closing their doors as in getting rid of their facility, but still existing as a nonprofit or a government.
Like they had to dissolve, they're gone, they're done.
Got it.
Yeah.
I'll also pull in ones who have massively changed how they operate. I think is interesting too, if they've actually
Yeah.
closed facilities.
Yep.
Massachusetts, so.
Yeah, I'm looking at, I was just doing numbers the other day, right? And I said because our board is meeting next week, and I said, okay, 87% of our operating budget goes toward personnel costs or facility costs.
Mm-hmm.
You can either cut back on the people, which ties directly to cutbacks on services, or we close this place down, we downsize, we got to do something. And
Mhm.
so, as much as I love this building and this facility and what we've built here, it's probably going to have to go.
Does anyone have a sense of how difficult or expensive it is to relocate within town as far as moving cable drops and things like that? I definitely feel like I'm just sort of stuck, right? Like I could save on the lease, but what am I just dumping it to Comcast and
Yeah,
Verizon to move down the street? I don't know, because I'm not against downsizing, but I
we were
feel very much
considering
stuck here.
that a few years ago. Verizon, we were literally just going to move across the street, and Verizon wasn't going to charge us anything. Comcast gave us a quote of between $20,000 and $40,000
Yeah, that's
fiber.
because I think that's when I because I when I we have money put aside, right? So like one thing for us is we have a good reserve account, which is good and bad. But the question is always, what are you going to use it for? What are you going to use it for? And I'm like, well, if we ever have to move, like our lease runs up and we have to move,
Mm-hmm.
we're either going to close or need to use all of this money, basically. Yeah. So
Something I should know on the subject of this. So, and actually, Alex Lamarche can chime in on this too. Our station, along with a bunch of the other stations in Western Mass, are talking about the possibilities of yeah.
got
We know
you.
what you mean.
Yeah.
But we're looking into preparing for if DEFCON 3 happens, what do we do? So, and maybe looking at like other ways to get funding. We'll keep you posted.
Like we'll keep our like we'll keep our identities and we'll keep we still be individual stations, but looking for more ways to work together towards that goal, rather than just become one big organization.
Yeah.
Well, Greg, you have
figuring it
Yeah,
out.
I'm just curious if there's any technical solution that doesn't to sending our signal to Comcast and Verizon or wherever you have that doesn't involve moving all of their gear up and down the street.
Well, we're actually engaged in that right now, and depending upon when you were first established, Comcast and Verizon are not moving anything over. They're just putting the new versions in. It's much smaller, and for them, it like Verizon is not charging. We think Comcast in the end is not going to be charging. We don't know for sure, but it's not that big of a deal for them if they have the system built out across town. The hardest part has been coordinating the different bureaucracies within the town and then the providers themselves to meet on the same day at the same time to agree where they're going to shoot their cable in. But so I'm surprised how easy it has been in that way.
If I could offer you some advice, Greg, what I did when we moved out of the old high school in 2013 is we left all that stuff there. And so when they rebuilt the new high school, it's still over there. So as long as I can get on the town's fiber loop, wherever I move, I'm going to be able to connect because I only wanted to move it, and they charged us to move it within a building about 150 feet.
Yeah.
So
sure.
they're going to charge it if they get, especially Comcast. But if you can move it once to a municipal building, that's probably not going to go anywhere for a while. That's probably your best bet because then you have some flexibility.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, we are at 12 o'clock right now. Are there any other last minute just comments or questions? No? Okay, all right.
Sorry, really quick. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think these are great. This is
Yay.
exactly what I think we need is something a little more informal just to kind of like shoot things back and forth. So I appreciate
sure.
it.
And we had a lot to talk about. So if you guys think that these need to happen more often than just quarterly, please send me an email. It's easy, katie@medfield.tv. Let me know your thoughts and anything that you want to talk about in the future. This is so important that we all
I think this
stay.
is great, so we should definitely do more of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I think more frequently would be good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Okay. All right. Let's do it then.
The people have spoken.
Thank you.
Bye.
Great seeing everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Sarah.
everyone. Have a nice weekend.
Bye, everybody.
Have a good one.
Bye bye.